Hey everyone, welcome to week 11. This week we're going to look at a very specific kind of part, a part that has a lot of picky special needs in order to make it look correct. So what we're doing this week is looking at drum set parts. Drum set and percussion parts both have a couple things in common. They tend to exploit layers and staff styles. The main point of this lesson is really going to be how to create and use staff styles effectively to make a nice, elegant-looking part like this. Alan Baylock, who's the composer over at University of North Texas, UNT, is a Finale user, and you can see by looking at the chart, this looks a lot like what we're doing. He's using the Jazz font, which we don't actually have access to at the moment. You can dig around. It's in there, but I think it's probably more hassle than it's worth. But he's also using a lot of special techniques here. If you check the first two measures, what you're seeing here is that he's used something we call rhythm slashes. Here he's used a technique we call hits over time. Here it's just regular slashes, and here he's using one-bar repeats. As we go further, there's one other sort of, I don't know if calling this a staff style is completely fair, but definitely a staff technique, namely multi-measure rests. None of these techniques is particularly difficult, though hits over time, which is going to yield measures like this and also measures like this. Hits over time is not like baked into Finale by default. We have to build it in. So let's get started and learn how to do all these techniques. Oh, last thing worth mentioning. You'll be recreating this drum part as part of this week's assignment. Actually, it's the entirety of this week's assignment. So if you want to work along, it'll give you a nice edge. You'll already have a document set up with these styles ready to go. You'll simply need to enter everything. We can pick pretty much anything we want here. I'm going to go with the band style jazz band. That's just going to give us most of the fonts we want. It's going to be the Broadway font instead of the jazz font, and I just don't want to go through the hassle of showing you guys how to load those fonts in. Loading fonts is a giant pain. So let's leave it as portrait. We're going to go ahead and do drums and pick the drum set from drums. We could also pick a percussion staff, but if you do this, it'll actually play back some of this properly. Take the A Train is our title. Our composer is Billy Strayhorn. And you can see all that on the file, of course. And as always, the file is included. On the Canvas site, so just grab it from there. The arranger, we're going to go ahead and put the arranger in here as well, for as much accuracy as possible. But rather than recreate the entire copyright, I'm comfortable if you simply write copyright 1941. For our educational purposes, we're not going to go any further than that. Time signature, he's using common time, so we need to select the C. Percussion staves don't care about the key signature. Incidentally, A Train is in C anyways, so that works. And we want an initial tempo marking swing, and we have a range of 196 to 224. We're going to type our range in here. Finale can support ranges, though it does strange things to playback. There's no pickup measure, and if we go all the way to the end, this gets to measure 221, so we're going to put 221 in for measures. Finish up, and we've gotten to the actual file. In our score view, we have measure numbers. This is going to make it much easier to work on since Alan Baylock has provided the same on the charts. You could do this in parts, but I definitely prefer to work in the score when in doubt. It's just easier to deal with the linked parts and some of those extra features. Okay, so let's get right into it. If we take speedy entry and we go right to our first measure, you're going to see that percussion is a little different because these lines and spaces don't represent pitches in the case of a drum set. They represent instruments. It's going to have a different effect. Let's take a look at the spaces. Top space, we have low to mid tom. C space, we have snare. The A space, we have floor tom, and the bottom space, we have kick drum. So it's representing the drums of the instrument. You go all the way to the bottom below it, and you'll see hi-hat with your foot. I realize it's kind of hard to read in the video because of that swing tempo marking. And if we go right above the staff, we have hi-hat closed. Slightly above it, crash cymbal. Slightly below it, ride cymbal. So the cymbals are above and below the staff. If you continue to click through all the lines, you'll find there's lots of other instruments hidden in here, but those are the bulk of the ones you need. All right, to continue on, we're going to do most of the work we're going to need on the C space. That's going to create our rhythm slashes. We're going to do our hits over time, the top ones. We're going to do them on top in the hi-hat closed position. And for the kick drum, we're going to do that right in the kick drum space in the bottom space. All right, so let's start by entering the rhythm of the first bar. Go ahead and put that in now. Okay, and then I'm going to use the slash right next to my right shift key to split up the eighth notes so that I can mimic this as much as possible. All right, that's close. And we can see the rhythms there. But as written, what we're telling the drum set player to do is to play the snare throughout this. We want it to be more, they're going to interpret this as play this rhythm however they feel appropriate for the piece. So we want to give them that same freedom. So most of what we're going to do now is with the staff tool. That's this treble clef here. When we click that, it brings up a special context menu. It's got a lot of features in it. Most of these things we can do with the right click though, which is going to be faster and easier. So first things first, stay on the staff tool, don't do what I just did. Highlight those measures. I clicked the first bar, shift clicked the second bar to select the region. When I right click, you're going to see there's a whole lot of options here. If you're on a one-click mouse, it's option click. Rhythmic notation is ultimately what we want. So let's select that, and you'll see it created the same effect. Let's say you didn't know how to do that though. We come up to staff, apply staff styles to score in parts, and you're going to see all of these different options here. Now, we haven't really gotten any better. What we have is we have all these different options, but we don't know what they are. But you do see something useful. We see that there's a shortcut attached to this, the letter R. Remember that one, file it in the back of your head. If we were to select that, of course, you get the same thing. So the only way we can determine exactly what these are going to do until we understand the names is to go to Staff, Define Staff Styles. Here's where you actually program your own staff styles. And here we can take a look at what's actually going to happen. All of this is going to be under alternate notation. So when you click that, you're going to see that it's selected rhythmic notation, which matches what we're looking for. So ultimately, that's what we want. The quickest way to apply rhythmic notation is just to hit the letter R. So right click, and oops, yeah, we're on the right tool. What's going on here? Right click, select rhythmic notation, or if you can remember it, just hit the letter R. Let's skip over the hits over time for a moment, since that's going to require some special features, and we'll go to measures 7 through 10. So same thing, highlight that region. And actually it looks like it's going to go into measure 11 as well, so why don't we highlight that also. And then for this, these are called slashes, so unsurprisingly it's the S key to do that. We could have gone through the same process, right click, slash notation is the very first one on the list. Didn't know how to do it, define staff styles, settings, find the one that looks correct. Okay. All right, so we have that. I'm going to go ahead and put in my rehearsal marking by going to the expression tool and then clicking right above that bar, holding M. And now it's giving us the wrong style of expression. We need numbers. We need measure numbers specifically. So we can double click this little handle here and notice the default style is there. You could pick measure number, but you're going to do this over and over and over again. And I like the little M shortcut. So I'm going to edit the one that has the shortcut. And down here, auto sequencing style will pick measure number. And now from here on out, the M key, let's try it out with rehearsal marking 27. The M key, if I hold it when I click, gives me the measure number with the correct number in it. I know the formatting looks a little different, the style looks a little different, we're close enough. All right, notice that bars 12 through 16 have a 1-bar repeat in them. If you're not familiar with this notation, this is really common in percussion. It just means do whatever you did in the previous bar again. So play some time, do it again, do it again, do it again, etc. So for all this one, it's called a 1-bar repeat. We hit O. But same basic idea, right click, and I could have selected it from the list. All right, so the last one we need to deal with is this tricky guy here, the hits over time. For hits over time, we can select the region, but if you right click in here, you'll notice there's nothing in here called hits over time. There's also nothing that says slashes with notes. There's nothing that implies we're going to get this result. And if you dig through, you'll find that there isn't anything that matches what we want. So we have to make our own. To do that, we go to Define Staff Styles. We're going to want to create a new one, but before we click that, notice that there are 21 staff styles. For this to appear on the list, we have to number it. I'm not sure why Finale doesn't do this for us, but it doesn't. So we're going to hit New, and we need the 22nd style. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 22 period to match their format. I really hate that they make us do that, but there you go. This style is called Hits Over Time. And then we're going to make it copyable, which will save us some time later. And we're going to go into alternate notation, and we want slashes. But the thing is, we want more than slashes. We want to be able to see notes that exist on the staff. So slashes hide all of the notes on the layer they're on, and it actually hides all the notes on all layers. But we have the option of turning that off on other layers. Note that here. So other layers, we're going to want to show everything. I don't need lyrics for this particular one, so I'm not going to turn it on. But if you ever wanted to be able to put lyrics against slashes, you have that option here. And then I can say OK. We've called it hits over time. We've made it copyable. We'll OK that. Now, if we were to select that here, it's not going to look like much because it looks basically the same because we did tell it put slashes on layer 1, and there's nothing else to compare it to at the moment. So slashes take up layer 1, so we clearly need the notes on other layers, layer 2, layer 3, maybe layer 4. We can get to our different layers here. Now, what do we actually need? We need stems pointing up, and we need some stems pointing down. Layer 2 automatically does down correctly. So let's go ahead and not put the up lines on layer 2. We've already got that and we need it anyways. So let's put it on layer 3. So to do this, I'm going to go to layer 3 and we're going to enter our notes. In this case, we need them at the top, the G line, well, G, I guess we'll call it space at top. And I want you to see what happens. And we're going to keep going here. And it looks good, sort of. Where's the problem? You probably noticed the stems are pointing down. And all our note heads are funny, but we'll deal with the note heads in another video. So stems are pointing down, which doesn't look great. It's because the default style of staff 3 is just to notate things normally. And when you have upper notes, they point down to make things from getting too messy with other staff systems. So to fix this, it's a little complicated. You might want to write this down, but follow along. We're going to go to Document. We're going to go to Document Options. Document Options is tremendously powerful. This lets you customize very fine-tuned just about everything about Finale. Everything from the thickness of lines to the exact shape of repeats and rests to the fonts that the documents use, all of that. In this particular case, we need to mess with the layer settings. Layer 3, we want to freeze our stems and ties up. Once we freeze them up, we also want to make sure our rests, which are currently way too low, line up with our notes. It turns out the standard for this is going to be 6. So we're going to change that to 6. And we don't want to apply this adjustment if there's only notes in other layers. We always want things up. So that's about all we need to do. When we hit apply, you'll see that the rests jump up, the stems jump up, and now it looks pretty good. We're not going to worry about the note heads on this video. I'm going to do a second video to go along with this that'll show you some of the pickier features, and we'll show you a lot of the additional stuff here. Okay, so to review the staff styles, we have our rhythmic slashes. Done with the staff tool, you select the region and hit R. We have our slashes, select the region and hit S. We have our 1-bar repeat. We select the region and hit O. Anytime you can't remember what they are, right-click the region and you have the entire list. If you can't figure out what the list means, go to Define Staff Styles and you can dig around in the settings and see what it is. When I first got Finale, I actually did this on virtually every bar just to see what it would do. Most of these styles are pretty standard, so once you're comfortable with the naming convention, I think you'll find it quite easy. We had a problem with hits over time. Hits over time didn't exist by default, so using a combination of staff styles define, we created this staff style, and document options layers to get the stems pointing in the right direction and the rests pointing in the right place. That's most of what we need to do. The bulk of the rest is getting in our score markings, creating a multi-measure rest and repeats, little brackets. Most of these things are quite easy. We have extra repeats, lots and lots of measure numbers, things that we can copy and paste, and a coda that's indented. We will take care of all of this in a second video. So assuming you're following along, once you're done here, just keep moving on to the next video and we'll get the rest of it done. Thanks.